The cake was already on the table before anyone said a word. It sat in the center of the kitchen, 3 layers high, wrapped in white frosting with blue sugar flowers along the edges. Exactly the way she used to make it. Exactly the way she had made it every year for as long as Julian could remember. But she was not there to make it this year. She was not there at all. Julian stood in the doorway and stared at the cake. For a long moment, he could not seem to draw a full breath. His daughter Nora, small for her age, stood on tiptoe beside the counter with a plastic spatula in her hand and a smudge of blue frosting on her nose. "I tried, Daddy," she said quietly. "I watched the video 3 times. Julian opened his mouth, closed it, and crossed the kitchen. He crouched until he was eye level with her, took her face gently in his hands, and gave her the only true words he could find. "It's perfect, baby." It was not perfect. The flowers leaned to one side, the top layer tilted slightly, the frosting thick in some places and nearly absent in others. Yet Nora had watched her grandmother make this cake every year since she was old enough to stand at the counter, and she had tried with everything inside her to bring something back that was already gone in the months after they lost her. The house still carried traces of Sylvia in ways Julian could not explain. In corners where her presence had once been strongest, Sylvia had possessed the loudest laugh in any room, the woman who called everyone baby and meant it with her whole heart. She had left a hole in the world shaped exactly like herself. The birthday tradition had always been hers. Not only the cake, but everything. Every year on her birthday, Sylvia spent the day offering small, secret kindnesses to strangers. She called it her birthday offering. She believed the truest way to celebrate being alive was to remind other people that someone saw them. She paid for the coffee of the person behind her in line. She tucked handwritten notes under windshield wipers that read, "You are doing better than you think, and somebody today is glad you exist." She bought an extra bouquet at the gas station and gave it to whoever looked as though they needed it most. She sat down beside anyone eating alone at the food court and simply asked how their day was going. She never told anyone what she did. Julian had only learned of it because he followed her once when he was 15. Curious and faintly suspicious, he watched his mother give a homeless man not merely her spare change but her lunch, then sit beside him on a bench and ask his name. The man's name was Theodore. They talked for a long time. Julian never forgot it. When Sylvia was gone, Julian inherited the tradition with reverence and a quiet kind of fear. He did not feel worthy of it. In that first year without her, on her birthday, he sat in a grocery store parking lot and wept for what felt like forever before he could make himself go inside. Then he bought 3 bouquets and gave them away, carrying her in his heart with every flower. This year, the weight felt heavier. Nora's grief had grown quieter and somehow deeper. Julian found himself wondering whether the tradition was too small for the size of the absence. Then he made a choice that felt like a mistake at first. He posted about it. It was never meant to be a large post. One evening, he sat at the kitchen table, looking at an old photograph of his mother standing in this same kitchen, covered in flour and laughing with her whole body. He wrote what was honest because he needed to set the ache down somewhere. My mom spent every birthday giving small kindnesses to strangers. She called it her birthday offering. She said life was the only gift worth celebrating, and you celebrated it by reminding people they were seen. She passed several months ago, and her birthday is coming up, and I don't know how to make the tradition feel big enough for how much I miss her. Her name was Sylvia. She called everyone baby, and she meant it. He added the photograph and posted it. Then he went to bed. He woke to a flood of notifications. He sat up and stared at the screen, unable at first to take in the volume of comments, shares, and messages arriving from strangers in places he had never been. People wrote that they would carry the tradition forward on her birthday in her honor. A nurse said she would leave notes for every patient she saw that day. A child who had asked who Sylvia was now wanted to give flowers to strangers too. A retired schoolteacher who had lost her own mother some years earlier wrote that she had been searching for a reason to do something meaningful and had found one. A college student said the post had moved him to call his mother after years of silence. A man named Theodore, from a city Julian did not recognize, wrote that he had never known Sylvia, but she sounded like someone worth honoring. By the time her birthday arrived, something larger than any of them had begun to move. Julian and Nora went to the flower market early. They bought armfuls of tulips, Sylvia's favorite, bright as sunrise. They wrote small notes on pieces of cardstock, their handwriting a mixture of Julian's careful letters and Nora's large, looping ones. You are not invisible. Someone today is rooting for you. You are enough. They walked through the city and gave the flowers away to a woman rushing toward a bus with a stroller and a look that said she was one difficult moment from breaking, to an old man outside a coffee shop reading a newspaper, one soft as cloth, to a teenager sitting alone on library steps, headphones in, eyes heavy with sleeplessness. The teenager looked up when Nora offered the tulip. She was perhaps 15 or 16. She studied the flower, then Nora, then Julian. What's this for? She asked. It's our grandma's birthday, Nora said. She gave things to people on her birthday instead of getting things. So we're doing it for her. The girl took the flower and held it with both hands, as though afraid she might crush it. Did she? She died, Nora said with the plain truth of children. But we're still doing it. The girl nodded slowly. Something moved across her face that Julian recognized, the way one recognizes a language learned in childhood and long unused. Okay, she said softly. Happy birthday to her. They spent hours walking, and the messages continued to arrive. A woman in Brazil had baked cookies and left them at a fire station with a note that read, "For Sylvia, whoever you are." A man in Japan had paid an elderly woman's train fare when she could not find her card, then sent a photograph of her surprised and grateful face with the words, "She reminded me of someone's mother." A kindergarten class in Canada had made cards for every person on their street, covered in crayon suns and flowers and the words "You matter." Their teacher had written beneath it all, "We learned about Sylvia today." Julian had to sit on a bench when he read that message. Nora climbed up beside him and leaned against his arm. They sat together in the gentle light, and he let himself feel the whole of it, the grief, the gratitude, and the strange, overwhelming sense that his mother had grown larger in leaving, her reach extending farther than any single life should have been able to touch. "Daddy," Nora said. "Yeah, baby. Do you think she knows?" Julian thought of his mother on that bench with Theodore, asking his name and staying to listen when she had somewhere else to be. He thought of every note she had slipped under a windshield wiper, every coffee she had paid for, every stranger she had turned toward with her whole warm heart. He thought of children in a classroom far away drawing suns for her. "Yeah," he said. "I think she knows." That evening they went home and cut the lopsided cake. Nora had straightened one of the sugar flowers while it was still soft, so it now sat a little prouder than the rest, slightly crooked but determined. Julian placed a single candle in the center and lit it. They sat across from each other at the table. "Should we sing?" Nora asked. "She would want us to sing," Julian said. So they sang, just the two of them, in a kitchen that still held her scent in certain corners, singing happy birthday to a woman who had believed so completely in the power of being seen that thousands of strangers on every continent, in languages she never spoke and cities she never visited, spent her birthday making sure other people felt it. Nora blew out the candle. The smoke rose and curled and vanished. The room grew quiet. Julian looked at his daughter's face in the soft light and thought about the word his mother had offered to everyone she met. "Baby." She had said it like a reminder, as though she were telling every person, the rushing woman, the old man with the softened newspaper, the teenager on the library steps, that someone, somewhere, had once held them when they were new, that they had arrived in this world small and needed and cherished, that no matter how many years had passed since then, it was still true, that it would always be true. That was what she had been giving away all those years. Not only kindness, but the quiet certainty that they had once been loved simply for existing. And somehow, in leaving, she had found a way to give that gift to everyone.